welcome everybody to today's webinar on IT4IT, the enterprise architecture for IT. And the whole premise of this is a bunch of work that has been done by a number of luminaries in the enterprise architecture and IT service management business. Basically, they ended up bringing to the open group what they were positioning as a new way of looking at the business of IT, how to run the business of IT, and of course how to improve that capability over time. And so the year before last, the IT4IT forum was created at the open group. Again, a peer forum to other communities at the open group, such as the architecture forum, the security forum, and others. And the good work of the IT4IT forum, of which APG has been a significant contributor to, is really a different way of looking at the way of what is the business of IT really charged with doing. What's a good lens to look at that as it relates to improvement opportunities, particularly as it relates to responding to requirements in today's digital economy. So the premise of IT is kind of based on some enterprise architecture best practices, which are one of them being a value chain. And I'm going to guess many of you might be familiar with the concept of a value chain, certainly made popular by Michael Porter almost 3 decades ago, where he came up with a value chain for organizations, to a great degree kind of focusing on really the concerns of traditional manufacturing organizations, although of course people have broadened their view of that as we've been transitioning into a service knowledge economy. But the whole idea of a value chain, which is recognized by a lot of business leaders as an effective way of really trying to understand the essence of what an organization does and how it delivers value to its customers, well, it seems pretty obvious when you think about it. If that's a good thing for helping the business come to grips with why it's in business, whether that business be healthcare, property and casualty insurance, retail, so on and so forth, that maybe we could be introspective and apply the same philosophies to running the business of IT. And this is based on the fundamental notion that all businesses need IT, and for the most part, what they expect and require out of IT is pretty much universal, namely, irrespective of your vertical focus as a frontline business, IT is IT is IT, and the things that we need to do and how we need to do them are generally well accepted. Again, there might be organizational, cultural maturity things that inform how you might practice some of this stuff, but why should every IT organization and every business have to figure out what this baseline foundation is? So, starting off with a value chain, and what you can see that here on this slide, they're basically, the IT4IT value chain is composed of 4 different value streams. And we'll be taking a look at example content at different levels of abstraction for these value streams. But starting off on the very left, we have strategy to portfolio, or S to P. This is often, a synonym for this is often plan. Then after we do, figure out what our strategy is and use that to define a portfolio, now we can transition into build activities, which is called requirement to deploy, or R2D. Then after that, we're in a position to be able to start fulfilling our service requests, and that's done by the request to fulfill, or R2F value stream, which is really about delivering services to the organization. And this is particularly important with the elevation of a lot of organizations propping up app stores for people to install software on their machines, as well as acknowledging that a lot of software solutions that organizations prop up are not necessarily on-premise or hosted. They may be, virtualized cloud solutions as well. And then we get into the operational side of IT, focusing on detect to correct, or D2C, which is sometimes abstracted as the run part of the life cycle. And the whole idea with value chains is that, value incrementally accretes as we move from left to right. So, obviously coming up with a strategy and using that to define a portfolio, has value, but if we stop there, what's changed? Well, not a lot. We got a whole bunch of plans, but nothing, has actually been put into place to actually address those strategic expectations. And then as we move further to the right, more value is accumulated until we, finally get to, creating operational IT solution assets that are used both internally and by our external customers and trading partners. The whole focus of the IT4IT value chain is really trying to, put a lens on how do we make IT as efficient as possible and agile as possible. And there are, in respect to that, actually, the IT4IT Forum is working on publishing some white papers on different scenarios, and one of them has been recently released on the agile scenario, so how to really exploit the IT4IT reference architecture for supporting lean agile software development supported by Kanban and other modern agile best practices. Like a lot of value chains, it rests upon a foundation of support activities. So these are things that we have to do to run the business, but they're not necessarily why we're in business. And again, this picture being focused on the business of IT. So typical things that we would find in a lot of value chains, namely asset management and finance, again, sourcing and vendor management, reporting and business intelligence, projects and resource management, and governance, risk, and compliance. And IT4IT specification defines a number of different types of content area. This is, kind of represents the abstract meta model of IT4IT and what content is composed of composes each part of that meta model, as well as the fact that in the current IT4IT standard, which is version 2.0, there is normative content, namely that stuff which is considered to be conformance requirements as it relates to particularly end user organizations' maturity and implementation, as well as those supported by ITSM and other tool vendors solutions. And so those would include things called, namely the 4 different value streams, the functional components that comprise each of those value streams, and I'll talk a little bit more about what those are. The essential services that those functional components offer, how they may be integrated with one another as it relates to some of them being systems of record. And we can really think of the functional component and services and SOR integration is really about the logical application architecture of the IT landscape. And then we get into really the data architecture part of the IT4IT landscape, which is focused on the notion that there's a service backbone, and I'll provide you some visibility into that in just a little bit, which is a special kind and an essential part of a general IT4IT data object. Those data objects have attributes and, of course, relationships amongst one another. But then there's, again, non-normative content that's certainly, informative and to be used as guidance. That would include the capability model and a set of related scenarios. So on this slide is really the high-level summary of the IT4IT reference architecture on which the IT4IT value streams are implemented upon. And so we can again see at the bottom, the 4 different value streams, and kind of think of this a little bit as kind of like a periodic table of the kinds of things that you need to put in place and actually support these value chains. The blue boxes are known as functional components. Again, those are really logical applications, at least as we might use that word in TOGAF, and I'll do a little bit of alignment with TOGAF terminology in just a little bit as well. And so, for example, in the strategy to portfolio value stream, we have